Good morning, third teamers. What is up? It is Saturday morning for me, 8 a.m., and I am so happy to be here with you this morning. It is episode 16 of Umpire at Home, and I'm going to bring on our special guest in just a few minutes. But like I always like to do, I would love to hear who is on board. Give me a shout out. Let me know something cool that happened to you this week because I had a couple cool things happen to me this week, or I did a couple cool things this week, and I'm going to tell you about them. The first thing that happened is that, Godders, you're here. Good to see you. Good morning, sir. So this happened to me. Wait, oh yeah, I pointed in the right direction for once. Here it is, certificate of qualification. I'm very qualified. I did the FIH Academy trainers course, and I don't know how it happened, but I passed. And so I'm certified in being certified. It's very exciting. Yeah, it's a nice little step on my journey. And given um, everything that happened last year in terms of my relationship with the FIH and all those sort of things, it was just one of those tough years. So it's really nice to get back and to be uh, ready to ready to go on this. So congratulations to me. That's my pat on the back. It's wonderful. Let me say hello to a few people. Simon Milford, always good to see you. Wet and windy in Surrey. Adam Swan, hey, good to see you. I haven't seen you for a little while, so thanks for joining in. Normal is here, of course. Dennis is here. Good morning. Dennis and I were out on the grass field just right over by my apartment building a few days ago and hitting the ball around with a couple other people. Very physically distant, very appropriate, but it was really nice to get out there and hit the ball around and have a chat, have a hockey badger chat with some of my good friends. So, good morning, Dennis. Roshi's here. Great to see you, Stain. Medag Michelle, he says, from sunny and cloudy Antwerp. Liam is here. Good morning. Mike Boyne. Good morning, afternoon, evening to everybody. Carolyn, hi. Elsa B's here from RSA. This is great. It's like I get to see my friends every week. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for the congratulations, Paul. That's wonderful. Let's see. Yeah, there he is. Graham, good morning. Simon, Joe, thank you, Joe. Ian, good morning, Ian. Nice to see you again. I feel like I'm seeing you twice a week now because I see you on the umpiring session and then on here. It's good to see you. Hannah, good morning. I haven't seen your sunflower before. Thanks for coming on board. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about, Neil, 6.5K run with your 8-year-old. What? How can an 8-year-old run further than me? I'm indignant. That's shocking. Also, stop running. It's bad for you. Jono, good morning. Oh boy. Boy, there's lots of people here. Slow your roll, big rigs. Okay. So the other thing I wanted to tell you about, it's been a big week for me because I finished something. And I have been working on this for, I think, as long as I remember. And I'm really actually nervous about telling you about it because when you've been working on a project for so long and you've had so many setbacks and so many pauses, it's kind of like, is this real? Is this actually going to happen? But yeah, I started and I have unofficially soft launched the third team on my website. So if you go to FHU3T.com, you will get taken to a page that tells you all about the third team. And the first stage of it being rolled out right now, which is my clip library membership. So if you want to hear anything about that and ways that you can access more materials, go to FHU3T.com and check it out. And now I'm going to take that down because I'm really nervous. So do it, like, don't all go now. Like, maybe go in a few days because I feel like my website's this fragile little butterfly. And if it gets too much attention, it's just going to fly away. There you go. Pamba, thank you very much. Yost from The Hague is here. Mike D. Gary, good morning from wet and windy Essex. Alan, good morning. James, hi. And you're very welcome. I'm really glad to be able to be here and putting these things on. Ruth, good morning. And Neil is claiming his 8-year-old took him for the run. Sure, that's a likely excuse. Byron from South Africa is here. Great. I'm a bit quiet. Oh, Stain, thank you for letting me know. Let me try to turn that up for you a bit. Let me know if that works better. I did turn myself down in the sound check, and apparently it was a mistake. Good morning, Terry, Stewart. Awesome. Okay. Ruth is reporting that the rain has stopped in South Bucks. I assume that means Buckingham, but I'm not an expert on English geography. And it sounds like I'm in a bit of an echo chamber. Well, we'll see. That might be our friend Michelle on the other end, but we'll find out in just a second. Lachlan, you're excited about listening to Michelle Joubert. I am excited about listening to Michelle Joubert. So I think I'm going to now bring on our good friend and the 10th guest now on Umpired Home. And here she is, Michelle Joubert. And there you are adjusting your phone. Perfect timing.
How's it, Keely? You won't believe what just happened. As we were doing everything testing, we have something called load shedding in South Africa. So it's
Okay.
just bombed me out of my laptop, so I've got no electricity. But I'm off my phone, so just hoping that the battery lasts. So I cannot believe it, and we don't get warnings for these things. It just
Oh,
happens.
no.
But as they say, Africa is a tough country. But I'm going to wing it through this on the phone, and let's see how we go. So apologies to everyone out there. These are the uncontrollables that happens, and I suppose the same as what it happens on the field also. So we just deal with it.
Absolutely. You've just provided us with a theme that we can run with for the whole show, for as long as we have you, is how to roll with the punches and, and adapt, because
Yeah.
I'm sure you and I have both had many, many experiences with things going crazy in the background, and you still got to go out there and put on your best game. So that's awesome. But,
Exactly. Yeah.
oh, I'm so sorry. So people at home, we're going to do our best with this situation. And if we do drop Michelle, then I will try to keep going. And when she can rejoin, or if she can rejoin, we'll bring her back on. Hey, let's just see what happens. Who knows? Who knows? But other than load shedding, Michelle, how are you doing? What's going on? Tell
No,
us
it's
about South Africa. Let us know how things are going there first with all the things.
I think thanks for this opportunity. Firstly, Keely, I think the work that you do and the awareness that you create around the umpiring sphere of things with hockey, it's much appreciated. I'm a big fan of your show, and just it's always nice to see the personalities that you bring on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very lucky to be part of the show today, and very fortunate. So thank you for the opportunity. And then, coming to South Africa, it's, I think, the same as, it's just crazy times that we spending at this stage in the world. So many things that are unpredictable. We question a lot of things in terms of the lockdown procedure. With us, we are currently on level 3, which was introduced last week only. So it means people can go out and buy alcohol. So everyone is quite happy. After about 2 months of no alcohol and no smoking or cigarettes or whatever else.
Right.
But it's for South Africans, I think it's to see more the poorer communities really suffering. And you see it on the news how it's kilometers of queues waiting to get food from obviously just whoever that can supply food for these people. The homeless people that rely on their little street vendors not being able to go out and run their shops and make money and obviously provide for the families. So, we try and put your ears and eyes and whatever else open to try and support wherever you can. Mm-hmm. But it's tough. I think with what we can offer versus the amount of people that are in need of things now, it's a drop in the bucket if you can just provide a meal for someone. But still, we try and help out wherever we can. And to date, I think about 1.8 million people have lost their jobs.
Yeah.
And that's not the people that have taken pay cuts. But like I said, I think every country is experiencing it in their own different ways. Me being involved at the school, we were introduced back into school system last week with the grade 12s being phased in. This coming week, a few more people or grades are being phased in. And it's difficult, how do you tell a teenager you can't hug your friend after not seeing them for 2 months, or, and it's the struggle is real.
Yeah.
But, and also the uncertainty, I think the frustration around not being able to get out on the sports field, the gym facilities are all closed. So I'm lucky I have a facility at home, so I keep sane. But yeah, I think the impact of this is going to be felt for many years to come still. I think it's going to have a huge impact on a lot of things in the way we do things. But yeah, there's the good from this is also we've gotten used to online on everything, online teaching, online, communication, things like that. And I think in a lot of ways we've grown. But yeah, it's some days are more frustrating than others, but it's good to have family and friends that you can make contact with I think in this time, it's the mental health that is really important for everyone. So yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm glad things are, well, I mean, you're surviving and fighting through like everybody else. Have you had that double whammy, any of the effects of the protests that are sweeping the world right now? Has that reached you guys yet? Or is that something that you're just reading about? Yeah, you're seeing it?
It has in a big way. And I think, you've got to understand where these people come from also. And it's so sad. It just depends which way you look at it also. But I understand that everyone is up in arms, and it's quite sort of profound in the school system at the moment.
Yeah.
But we're working through it, and it's our job to try and educate and help people and help them understand also. And trying to find ways for the youth of today to better things in the future, and not just protest just because of protesting. There needs to be an outcome from it, and to educate the youngsters. It's not just all about standing in the streets and singing a song, or sometimes, they do become violent or whatever. We've got to, if they understand why it's happening and, what the outcome, if they have goals with this, then it's a good purpose. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really important for us, especially, a lot of us in the umpiring world, just by the virtue that we can participate in sport and dedicate so much of our time to it, things like that. We are in positions of privilege in our society, and I think it's really important right now that we take a bit of a step back and we listen to what's happening. It's really easy for us to say, oh, nobody should be protesting when there's a pandemic going on. But this is a pandemic and has been a pandemic for them for hundreds of years. And it's important for us maybe just to take a moment, take a really long moment and just listen to what we're hearing. And what I'm hoping to see out of this, I think a lot of us had been sort of watching what was happening with the pandemic and wondering if this is going to change a lot of things. Is this going to actually affect our social structures? Are we going to change the way we vote? Are we going to change our economic policies? Are we going to, work on our social safety nets? I think the protests have now really given us an area in which we can say this has to change. And I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful that we're seeing it. I'm grateful that we have so many leaders around the world who are speaking up. And yeah, it's our time for listening, and then we can take some action and support with allyship. So
100%, I agree with it. And it's through all of this, it creates awareness also. And I think so many people are ignorant to things, but I think you can't ignore what's happening around the world at this stage, because it's everywhere. It's all over social media. It's on the news. It's everywhere. It starts affecting people around you. If it's not the COVID-19, obviously the disease itself, it is people being affected because of job losses, lack of income, having to support families. And then you start looking at there's a ripple effect to everything that's happening here. So eventually you get to a point where you can't just turn a blind eye to it. You have to sit and reflect on, things that can happen from this. And I think also for me that the nice thing was to see how nature was starting to reset itself. I remember probably after a month of lockdown, we got photos of snakes in the road at our school. I know there's a lot of snakes at school. There was an owl sitting on one of the benches in the middle of the school building. which is quite cute. And then there was a vervet monkey, a blue ape or whatever, sitting in what I didn't even know we had apes around the school environment. So
Wow.
it's just interesting to see how nature just resets itself, and it makes you rethink things also. If we didn't just abuse everything, it's actually, the world is actually a beautiful place to live in.
Yeah, absolutely. So many things going on, and it all really directly affects all of us in the hockey family and sport. And, I think it's important for us to acknowledge it and talk about it, as much as we can.
Yeah,
But,
for sure.
yeah, and we're also here to talk a little hockey because we're all a bunch of hockey badgers here. So maybe this is a good time for us to queue up the game. Now, I'm just going to put this on the screen. This is the first match queue from GB versus Australia. I'm putting the link to the match in the comments. It's also in the description. So if you haven't queued it up yet, this is what we're watching today with Michelle. I think you're just going to be watching your phone screen. And
I'm going to try my best to try and see what's cooking. Hopefully I can remember some things of the game, but hopefully the electricity comes on in the process. But I'll definitely keep you posted, and let's go through it. That's fine.
Awesome. Okay, so everybody home, we'll get ready to start the game. So if you've got it queued up, 1:30:25, and I'm going to start on my end here. Jubes, you're getting lots of comments coming through from jokers like Lim, Ragu's on board. Oh boy, you
I'm sure
got
I'm
an
getting
oh golly gosh
some abuse.
you got an oh golly gosh from Lim, and I got a hello Keely duck. So I think we can see who's who's the more popular of the two of us. But I totally agree. Anyway, okay, let's get this match started. We'll go in 3, 2, 1. And yeah, we're starting with the very distinctive voices of the people at Lee Valley. So you were umpiring there, obviously doing the Women's World Cup, and you'd done a few of the Pro League matches there. Tell me about what the Lee Valley setup is like from your perspective when you go in. What is it like? Because it seems like it's really amazing in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think I think I've been quite fortunate to have a couple of tournaments at Lee Valley. Just the whole setup being so close. Obviously, it's the Olympic Village around or whatever else from London 2012. Just the freedom around the facility. Everything is, if you're a sports fanatic, you can do whatever and see people outside around the pitch, obviously.
Yeah.
It's got a major indoor arena, which they then divide into different lounges for the teams and whatever else, umpire's room, a chill room, whatever. And then you walk out on the pitch, and it's insane because I think the stands are elevated. So it almost like, it feels like you're at the bottom of like a bottom of a pot or something. And it just, you stand on the field and you look up, and it's an amazing venue to actually host a tournament at. And then obviously the crowds also get quite involved in the game because they're close enough. So you feel the crowd. Not that I can say that I can't sort of participate in whatever the noises are on the side, because in the game situation, I think you're more zoned in on what happens on the field. But it is an amazing facility, and I think just what England Hockey have done in terms of bringing the public, or the awareness and growing hockey as a spectator sport. It's always almost, sellout stands. The people are passionate. They buy merchandise, whatever else. So it's really a great atmosphere there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Is Lee Valley and maybe the Women's World Cup, were those the biggest crowds that you've umpired in front of, or did you have bigger crowds, say at the Rio Olympics, where you did the gold medal final, or where was the biggest match that you've umpired in terms of spectator numbers? Somewhere in Joburg?
No, we're lucky if we have 4 people locally watching any type of hockey. So I think you don't realize the numbers. You can have 3,000 people at a game, but if they all sing the same song, it feels like there could be 60,000 people there. And I think what stands out is more the passion from the obviously the local supporters. So tournaments that would stick out to me would probably be The Hague. World Cup, Women's World Cup, where they obviously it was soccer pitch that they converted. That stadium was insane, and just in the finals, the whole of obviously Holland was there, all in their orange, and it was really amazing being on the field and hearing them sing the national anthem. Then you go across again to Argentina, probably one of my favorite countries to umpire in, and it's insane, the energy just that you take in on the field, and that's just from the crowd, is amazing. So there they can have a stand capacity of, let's say, 6,000 people, but the noises are insane.
Yes.
And as long as you're having a good game and Argentina is winning, then it's cool. But if you make a bad decision, they let you know about it. And sometimes, it's probably better not understanding it, a language, but I do understand a bit of Spanish, so I know exactly when I've made a mistake or people don't agree with me. Yes. But yeah, it ends up in good stories to tell and to share.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember I think the biggest game I ever did was in Chile. Were you at the 2005 Junior World Cup or 2009 with me? I can't remember.
2009
which.
Junior World Cup, yeah, in Boston, yeah.
Right. So the 2005 one was in Santiago, Chile, and my first game of the tournament was the last game on the second day. So I literally waited for as long as possible to get on the pitch. Not by my design, but there I was, and it was Chile versus Spain, and they had free admission. And everybody, all the fans just packed around wherever they could find. They were climbing up scaffolding, they were doing everything, and they were dressed up. They had streamers and balloons and chants, and yeah, same thing. I was kind of dismayed at how much Spanish I could understand coming from the fans at the wrong times. And I was like, man, I wish I was totally ignorant, because I really blew that one.
Yeah.
So it's weird how you can tune it out, but you're also, it's just part of the whole awareness. I don't think you ever shut things out entirely, but you choose what to focus on in certain moments, right?
Yeah, and I think it's a big that's a training tool also. As soon as you start focusing or you start paying attention to what's happening off the field, you start making mistakes on the field, and that's where you just have to, that little, I don't know, alarm goes off in your head. It's like, hey, I'm here on the field. I've got to participate in the game and forget about what's going on the outside. But it's amazing. Yeah, I understand. The athletes are idols and role models to so many people, but we've been received by so many countries, so many places that I've been fortunate to travel to because of my umpiring career, where the general public, they see you, they're happy to greet you, whatever else. So it's really nice. And it's humbling also in the same place, because we're just a person. I see myself as that. And then when people start making contact and say, oh, hello, and whatever, you're that umpire, then it's like, geez, I didn't know that these things exist. But it takes time to get used to it. And, it sometimes adds to the stress also. Like, you just have to try and still remain focused on getting the decisions right, or trying to get them right as often as possible on the field, and just leave the stuff that you don't control on the sideline, and just get on with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that brings us nicely into a little question here from my friend Dennis here in Calgary. He would like to hear your tips for staying calm and centered during a high pressure, high level match. What do you got?
Sure. So one of my biggest things, and that I have been working on, and as I get older also, I think I slow down and the game just picks up pace. One of my stresses, or one of the ways I used to cope with nerves on the field, was just to keep running, and stay as close to the game as possible. Okay. And then obviously it's breathing techniques. Also, we do belly breathing. So as soon as you're a water penalty corner, or there's a video referral, you have your zone in, zone out sort of moments on the field. And it could be when you're a water penalty corner, it's just that, you just relax and try and, like a sitting duck on water, basically, the body just try and stays calm, but inside everything is like pumping. So breathing techniques. And I think it's also just to zone out. You've got to try and, in that moment, it's so difficult. You've got so many things running through your head, but you just think about the next decision and not worry about what's happened in the past, because once you start thinking about stuff that's happened in the past, it just snowballs and it just creates havoc inside of your head. So it's to just bring your focus back to the moment, getting the next decision right. There's nothing you can do about what's just happened. or with a mistake you've made. It's just to try not to repeat that, or no two mistakes in a row is what I always say.
Okay.
So it's always difficult. I think, different games bring different. Sometimes it's going to be a clash game, and then you've got to be focused from the start. Sometimes it could be a boring game where there's really nothing in it, and then just all of a sudden something happens, and then it just becomes a tense game. And that's where I think it's really important also that whoever you teamed up with, that we're both on the same page. You can't have, your co-umpire reacting to tension that happens on the field and you trying to pull it back and calm it down.
Yeah.
So it's different in different moments, but I think the big thing is to, I think on the field would be to just try and refocus and think of the next decision and get that right, and let that be a positive to take you on to the next decision that happens on the field.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we're learning and we're developing techniques to cope with stress, or to cope with our physical emotional reactions. And something that I'm hearing over and over again is that you can't stop yourself from feeling something, or you can't stop yourself from thinking something, because it's the elephant in the room. You're going to think, it's the game. I made you think about the game, that sort of thing. So the only way you can cope with, say, the nerves of being in a big game is to decide that sensation is very much there, but actually it means you're excited. So you're just shifting it into something that works for you better. When you're dealing with the pressure in the moment, and you're in the game, and maybe something hasn't gone well, it's about replacing those thoughts. You can't stop thinking about, but if you occupy yourself with what's coming ahead, absolutely, you've got a chance, and plus it will help you make the next decisions a lot better. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
It's also really important to understand that we are all different. Some people need to have no stress in order to perform. For me, I need to have some sort of a fear factor inside of me, and that helps me to focus in the game. So those high pressure situations actually, as you gain experience, also you learn your own ways and means to cope with it. And then trying to, once the camera is on your face, to not show the panic in the moment, and then to try and have a sense of humor about it also. If there's so many things that we miss, so many things that we, like we wish we could go back and change, but we can't. And then it's to try and have a sense of humor about it, and also to self-reflect afterwards. And hopefully that gives you tools to go into the next game or the next tournament or whatever else. But it's quite important to reflect and to understand for yourself that it's pretty much individual. We all have different ways of coping with stress. What we can't be is arrogant and think that the game owes us something. We have to go out there and serve the game to the best of our abilities. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. It's all those things really come into how you're connecting yourself on the field, and that comes through when you're out there. So I really like that. I'll bring up another question now. We got about 2 minutes. We've got a clip that I'm going to be able to bring in, so you can make contact with the game, because you're not able to watch it. People at home are commenting on the thread and keeping us up to date, so that's nice. They're like, "Oh, nice green card." So yeah, they're watching. That's important. So Francois Du. Oh, his name's Francois, and I don't want to try to pronounce the second name. Asking, how do you cope with or bounce back from one of those tougher games?
I think also it's a good question, and I think a lot of people think that there's some secret recipe that you just give people advice and it just happens. I've had many of those games where and I'm probably my own worst sort of analyst in terms of games. I never look at the good. I always go and look at where I made mistakes, and that's what I would hammer on. And sometimes it eats away and you forget about why we are doing these things. So I think, when you get to a bad game, you've got to sit and the important thing is your teammates, our fellow umpires, umpire managers, trying to talk through it, not to pretend that it didn't happen, but rather to acknowledge the fact that it wasn't the greatest performance, check and see where you went wrong, and trying to just find out where the triggers were. Maybe I was overly emotional in the game, and that just set the tone for an emotional game. So, players react to our emotions also. If we are going to be they say high emotions equal low intelligence. And I'm one of the people that have a very short fuse sometimes away from the field. So when I get challenged on the field, it's taken some time to try and just get that calm sort of effect going. And then, it's just to try and get it, again, the same as what I said earlier. What's happened has happened. And you've got to put it aside and then try and get yourself excited for the next game. If you have that opportunity to have it at a tournament where the next day or 2 days later you get a chance to actually go and redeem yourself, because that's the feel-good thing, and it gives you trust again in terms of, I'm here and I can do this, but it takes one bad decision that can just ruin things for you, and you ask yourself, why am I doing this? This is, I shouldn't be here. I know nothing. The players tell you you're bad. The coaches sometimes get aggressive, but then I think in the same sense, as you sort of build rapport with players with teams and coaches, and you are open to discussion, that's where you gain respect. And then that's where the relationship sort of starts developing, where on the field, the teams know how to approach you, what you will allow and won't allow, and trying to be consistent as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. We've got some nice comments coming through reinforcing some of the things that you're talking about. Liz Pelling saying, being honest with yourself is very good advice. David Smitherd here saying, reflect, note, and move on. Very important. So yeah, and the one thing that you said that I really liked in there that I'll pluck out was when you said, think about what you were giving to the game as well. Like because I find that when we're in our toughest moments and we're really beating ourselves up, we're making the game about ourselves again in that other way, right? So it's about, okay, so what was I giving for that entire game? Well, for 59 minutes and 45 seconds, I gave an exceptional performance. So that is not something to be dismissed. That still built a great game. And just because there was 15 seconds in there where things went a little bit wrong. So having the perspective of looking at what you were serving, what you were giving to the players, that I think that is really important for sure. Oh, we missed one of our.
Also, we missed.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah.
Go ahead. We'll go back to it later.
So often we stand on the field and we think, geez, everything, the spotlight is on us, whatever else. You go back afterwards and you look at the clips or you watch the game, which I very seldomly do. And I'm sorry for all my umpire managers out there. I hate watching it afterwards. Don't like seeing myself. And then you actually see that the focus, everything there is not on us. It's on the game. The spectators are there for the players and for the teams. They want to see a good game. We hardly get seen except for that one time where you make a mistake and then they kill you. But it's and it puts things in perspective. Also, it levels the playing ground a bit for you. And for me, it's just it keeps you sort of grounded. Like, hockey will happen regardless of whether there is an umpire or not. Someone's going to take a whistle and still umpire the game at a local level or whatever. So the game isn't just about us. And I think it keeps you humble, and it makes you, it keeps you working to try and better yourself every game. It doesn't matter what level it is that you're involved in. You've just got to be open and willing to learn.
Yeah. Totally agree. Let's bring in another question right now. Ruth is letting us know that was a great PC. She was very happy with that. So what I'm going to do is when we get to the end of the first quarter here, for everybody at home, we're going to pause. I'm going to show a clip from the first quarter. We'll go back to it because it's just a tiny little play, but I liked how you handled it, and I wanted you to sort of talk us through, because it's one of those calls that I think we get at many levels of play, and we're all still trying to sort through that out. That wasn't English. Anyway, doesn't matter. But here's
sounds like
question.
South African English, that.
We all take our liberties. So Rashid here was asking, when you're not at the top, and there's a lot of people who are like, they seem to understand that you really do, you've worked through some of these things yourself in order to get right to the top, but respecting that you've had some tougher times as well. So Rashid's asking how you sell your decisions when you're not feeling like you're at the top of your game.
It's a good question, and it's a tough one.
Yeah.
I don't think you ever sell those decisions. What I can admit to is often something happens and you just don't know. You go with your gut feeling. You can be 110% prepared for a game, and just something happens, and a lot of it, umpiring wise, is you have to have a feel for the game. You have to understand, and sometimes you just see players' reactions or something like that, and you've got to admit, if 10 players around you are standing and they are not happy with your decision, then I think it is time to check in with your co-umpire. And that's probably part of our pre-match chat is, if there's something that's happened, we are fortunate enough, obviously at international level, that we are mic'd up with radios. Yep. But that the pre-match chat between you and your co-umpire, that trust, the teamwork, you've got to have the trust. So if it's 10 players around you, you just get a feeling that maybe you got it wrong there. We are fortunate, obviously, with the video referral process that I'm very much a fan of. And then it's hopefully your co-umpire will tell you, look, you did miss a foot there, and then just apologize and get it right in the moment. And other than that, if it is a decision that you have to sell, it's all about its body language, and not trying to sound too assertive, but you just got to be firm in what you do. And, when you tell players, I'm sorry, I didn't see it, this is what I saw, they tend to have a bit better understanding also. We're not always going to get it right. Yeah. And it's also to identify the crucial areas. When you make a mistake in the 25 or 23 meter area or inside the circle, chances are teams are going to hate you or scrutinize you. And then in between the 223s, I think players and coaches are more forgiving. But still, they do tend to want to discuss certain things with you. And it's about acknowledging the fact that maybe I missed it. And it happens often. You sit and you watch clips afterwards where we get tagged in our own clips by the umpire managers. And then you sometimes sit like, what did I do there? What was I thinking? And then it's hopefully not making the same mistake. So none of us are perfect. And I think I can't to date, and I don't think I'll ever be able to say that I've had a perfect game where everything was perfect. It doesn't matter the level of the game, obviously whatever placing it was or whatever. There's no such thing as a perfect game. You need to understand that mistakes are part of the course and part of your career, and it's just to bounce back from it. And if you have a bad game, you see it as that. To be able to come off the field and say to your co-umpire, not my best performance, and to have the support from your team, I think that's more valuable than anything because it helps you bounce back again.
Yeah, absolutely. What I really like that it was so amazing when you said that when you're not having a good game, in order to actually gain more credibility on the pitch, it's important to acknowledge with the players that maybe you're having, maybe you did miss that call. And that's actually the way that you sell your other decisions, is by being humble enough to take on that feedback and go, hey guys, I just didn't have the angle on it. Sorry. Or, I got unsighted, or I don't know what happened with my brain fart. And that's the sense in which the players acknowledge, okay, they're able to recognize that they've made a mistake. So when they're making all of their other decisions and being confident, maybe that means that they really do believe strongly in what they've just called. So I love that. That is really amazing.
I remember sorry, Keely, I remember something now. I was at the Tokyo Test event last year, and it was Australia, Japan that were playing, and the Japanese goalkeeper had made a save, and her glove came off. There was a rebound, and the Aussie player took another strike, and obviously the keeper then made the next save with her bare hand, and the ball went out. And I had the Australians run at me, and I was like, and then they said, is she allowed to do that? And I was like, I don't know. And I kept saying to the player, just use your referral, because I'm sure by the time it goes upstairs, and the player didn't want to use a referral for being scared that if they get it wrong, they'll lose their referral. And we had a good chuckle afterwards, because that's the first thing I did. So they ended up not going for their referral. We restarted with a long corner. They were trusting me. I had no idea what the rule was with that. Absolutely no idea. And it was actually funny because Martin Madden from Scotland, he was our video umpire. And in the break, he came over on the radio and he's like, how dare you want to send that up to me? I didn't even know it. You were sitting with a rule book trying to go through it, whatever. So, that whole thing of expect the unexpected, and there's something that I learned last year about the rules. Apparently, it's only the stick and the helmet that has to be on. They can play with any part of their body. So if the glove is off, as long as the ball didn't hit the glove lying on the surface inside the circle. But yeah, it was. But again, we could have a good laugh about it, and I think that's what players these days, they want officials that they can have a discussion with, and it's not. We're not dismissive or turn around and just walk away or whatever else. So that relationship takes time to build. But once you're there, it really is a good feeling to be able to communicate with players. And I think a lot of the teams have become more interactive with the umpires, not just on the field, but off the field. We greet each other, and I think it's a good thing. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I noticed that in Amstelveen when I was over there. I saw you at the Pro League finals, and I did notice how many conversations you guys were having with the players, and mingling around at breakfast and things like that. And it was really nice to see, or maybe having an adult beverage a little bit later, once all the games were over. But I think that's really important, and that's part of this whole exercise, is to make sure that you guys get to show just how human you are, and what great people you are. And that, I think, just adds to everything that we're bringing to the game. So that's fantastic. I have no idea where everybody else is in the broadcast. I paused my game at the beginning of the second quarter. So hopefully everybody can rejoin me on that one. We're just rolling with it. But let's show this little clip from the first quarter. This is back at 4:30. So hopefully you can see that. I don't know how big your phone is, Michelle, but let's see how this goes.
Paris.
So the play's coming towards you, and the Australian player puts it up in the air with a little bit of 3D skill, and you call that down for the danger, and you say, yeah, you brought it up. I don't know what Rosie's saying to you there. She's saying 2 of something, who knows. But when you slow it down in the slow-mo, what I think was great is that you're watching. At first, the attacking player hasn't created danger, but it's when she tries to poke it around and the defender comes in very legitimately to, let's see if I can play all this again. She comes in to actually make the tackle out of the air very safely. And it's at that point when the attacker re-engages, because she tries to kind of duck around the side of her, kind of do like nutmegger, but in the air, which is a hell of an effort. But that's the point at which the danger is being caused to the defender, and that's when you came on the free hit. Do I have that assessment right? I don't mean to tell you what you called, but I'm just trying to describe it.
No.
See it.
No, I definitely can see it, and I probably, always in hindsight, I always look at these things and I'm like, oh, what was I doing? But there it's the striker that actually creates a danger. She's obviously receiving a flat ball on the reverse stick. The ball comes up in the air, so she's creating danger. It's not an aerial ball where there's an initial receiver that everyone has to be 5 meters. So it's her lack of control. So she's the one that actually initiates the danger, and then also trying to play the ball up instead of trying to bring it down on the ground. Yeah. So I think that's where we sometimes misinterpret these things, where they would feel, well, the ball is in there and I'm the receiver, but there was never an aerial ball there. She created the danger and the defender is there. So, and those are the ones that you have to pick up quite early in terms of whistle timing, because it can end up in quite a bun fight or blood spill. And then, your end of after match debrief is going to be, why didn't you just blow it earlier? And it's like, I don't know, but I'll do it next time.
Exactly. Awesome. Okay. So I think if everybody wants to rejoin me at the beginning of quarter 2, I don't know, you might just want to go ahead and keep watching wherever you are. Like, I'm not the boss of you. You have fun. This is your jam. So this is where we are, 1:18:25 on the FH Live broadcast. And again, if you're joining late and you have no idea what I'm talking about, I'll just put the game link yet again up for you guys on FH Live. I have yet to find out how many people are actually rewatching the games. I want the FH to tell me if I'm giving them the FH umpires bump, but we'll see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to start the second quarter now, and maybe you guys are there. Who knows? I don't know. We're just winging it here. We're just winging it. Okay, so there were a couple questions that came in through the chat, and I'm going to try to find them. But
Okay.
Carol says hi, by the way. Carolina Del Fuente. Good to see her.
Caro,
Yeah.
Caro. Hello, Caro. Oh, she is my partner in crime in this game, so it's good that she's watching.
Exactly. Carol, I don't say anything about any of your decisions. You were perfect. It's Michelle I'm thinking. No, I'm just kidding. It always makes me nervous when I know that, somebody else who was on the game and joins in, and I'm like, oh boy, did I pull anything out that I'm a little worried about? But there you go. Okay, so our friend Tyron Jabu Barnard.
Yes.
He is asking if there's any players that specifically raise your temper just a little bit.
Well, probably one of my bad personality traits would be I'm not very good with names or memory, and I think it just changes. You get a tournament where you get on it with players really well, and then you might have a bad game and a player just sort of presses the wrong button, and you have words. But I think you've got to. It's that saying where they say game face on, and it's the same for us as umpires. Also, I think sometimes people think you are this specific person because that's who you are on the field, but actually off the field, it's not such a bad person. So I would hate to say that there are players that would really press the wrong button or whatever. I think we've got to take it into context. Also, it doesn't matter the level of the game. There are two teams, and both teams want to win. So on any decision that they don't agree with, you've got to allow emotion. It's what makes the sport beautiful. It's what makes sports exciting, is the emotion and things like that. For me, it's to be able, after the game, to reconnect with that player and then having just a sort of emotionless discussion around it. That gives me my respect back to the players again. So you've got to allow it. And also when you make mistakes, there are players that know how to communicate with umpires, so they just generally just friendly and understand. And then there are those players that just hate umpires, and that's also okay. We're not there to be liked. We're there to do a job. And, hopefully we allow the best team to win. We can't say every decision is perfect. The aim is to do that, but it can't be that. But I think if you can come off the field saying the right team won, and I'll go and look at areas where I need to improve, and it changes. Like sometimes things repeat itself. Other times, it's something new that comes up. But we've got to allow players and teams to show emotion on the field. And it's our job to remain calm and to try and just sort of bring down the emotional level and just help the players understand that we have two eyes. We've got 22 players watching, to watch in front of us. So, yeah. There
you go. Caro's just giving you the compliment that you're really great at doing that. So I just slipped that on the broadcast.
Caro is really a good co-umpire to have. Whenever I get an appointment and it's with her, it's always a smile on my face because I know there's never that, geez, what was that for moment. So we've come a long way.
Yeah, there you go. So where I am in the match, we're at 12:45 and we've just had a video referral that I thought might be interesting for you to take us through, because it's one of those sort of technicalities around referrals and advantage. And I wanted to show that and go back. Everybody's probably just watched it, but I thought it was a really good referral to go through. So I'm going to put it up on the screen now.
On the 23, into the circle it goes.
This is when the ball hit Chalker near the end line, across the circle from you.
Straight away, she wasn't even interested in playing the ball.
And what the commentators were focusing on was the fact that she didn't try to play on through to the goal.
So they're asking for danger off the stick here.
I mean, I'm absolutely zero surprise that you needed to play on in that situation, because it's across the circle, it's in a dangerous spot from you. But rather than try to keep playing, the ball clips off the defender, comes up high into Shashka's arm, and she basically just stops and realizes that you're not in a position to see what had happened there.
Ball's not going to take a bit of time.
Then she comes to you for a referral. So can you lead us through what that sort of all meant with the advantage and the lack of advantage and all that kind of stuff?
There's no advantage with a ball hitting the body, and I think where that hit her on the arm. And this is where I have so much respect for the players that take the time and they know the rules, because she had done. I was obviously not in a position to see exactly where the ball had hit her, at that pace, also sometimes playing things in slow motion. I don't think I've ever made a mistake watching a replay or watching a hockey game from the stands. But when you're on the field, it's split-second stuff. It's your high-pressure area on the field. So we do miss things, especially on the far side. So my respect to the player who she exactly knew, because had a goal been scored from there, it wouldn't have been allowed because there's obviously it had come off the body. So I respect players like that because they understand. It's just there's some players that just that they'll make brilliant umpires themselves because they understand the game, they understand the rules, but they also know how to question you on certain things. And in that regard, I obviously didn't see it. To me, it could have looked that it hit the hand, so therefore it was advantage. And she had known that it hit her on the arm, so it should have then been a penalty corner, for the danger.
Yeah, absolutely. So a few people are working through this on the comments and things like that. And Ruth, just to repeat that, just because she was 2 or 3 meters away from the goal, she couldn't play on from the ball hitting her, and because it's like a forced foul, so you can't you can't play advantage off a foul that you've been forced to commit from the danger. So that was, like you said, just incredibly smart decision from Emily Chalker just to stop, make it very clear, and to come to you for the referral. And I mean, we've all loved it when we see really knowledgeable captains or other players, other leaders on the pitch like that who actually get what's going on. And boy, like the next time she comes to you, or somebody else has watched the play, they're going to be like, well, I'm taking that player a lot more seriously now because they have that credibility with me, and they've earned it. So
yes, and
really
it's
nice.
not they're not the people that will query every decision, and trying to force you to use your referral or whatever. She's a decent player, and she does know the game really well, and how we apply the rules. There's a flip side to this also, where sometimes, and I think it's more lower level hockey, where the ball hits a foot inside the circle and immediately everyone stops playing. And, our job as umpires is, as you climb the ranks, it's less is more in terms of whistle. So I think in that moment, had it been that situation where it was clear cut, I was playing advantage. If a player then just stopped playing and run at me, I would have to deal with that. I would have to stop time and say to the player, there's a thing called advantage. If you keep running, I'm just going to carry on. You've got to almost anticipate and understand what players are trying to do. So there is a flip side to it. But I think in this situation, she had dealt with it really well and actually helped me, because it could have created a very uncomfortable scenario and something difficult to deal with.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So we're at the point of the game now where I think, I can't remember if Australia is now 2 goals up or they're 3 goals up very quickly. I'm just waiting for the replay to go. Brooke Paris has just scored that slider where she reached for the ball and just sort of reverse chipped it over Hinch running out here. And it's a weird sensation, isn't it, when you're calling these goals? And you called, I think, most of the goals in the game. Carolina's going, hey.
I was busy, yeah.
Yeah, you were quite busy. It seemed like the pitch was slanted your direction in both of the halves. But you're in the middle of this, stadium with amazing fans. Yeah, it's 2-0 now, and things are getting really quiet all of a sudden. How do you change your approach at all with the way that you're managing the players, or is there anything that sort of gets into your mind, like, okay, now I have to think about this, when you've had a couple of goals that have really kind of deflated maybe the other side? Or is there a reset that you go through as an umpire when there's big shifts in momentum like that?
I think the easy part is if a game does run that way, where it becomes one-sided and also the game runs away. If you're the active umpire, the busy one, so easy to stay in the game. The challenge is for that non-active umpire to actually stay in it, because at any time the game can change, and then you need to be on top of it, because it's like reading a book and you're not 100% in it and your head just flows all over the place. That's what happens if it's a game that just goes one way. That's where the mental training comes in terms of you've got to find tools for yourself to keep you focused in the game. I think you try not to think about it too much, because if a team has playing really well and they're trying to push for goals, we've still got to produce the results or the level of umpiring. Yes. It doesn't matter what happens in a game, and sometimes it is difficult. It is challenging, but it's still you've got to always put in the back of your head there's always that what if moment, and knowing that it can turn at any stage. So yeah, it's we don't control what happens in a game, but what we do know is, like what happened in this game, it started going one way, like the boring way, and then it just changed all of a sudden. And that's again where it's so important to have a really good connection with whoever you're umpiring with, to understand that the game can change and that we communicate and we're on the same page and you actually trust your co-umpire also. So
yeah. I think it's a lot easier when you're the less busy, maybe more supporting umpire at any stage when you've got the radios, because I think you can sort of be watching and understanding what you're seeing, because as if you're the busier controlling umpire, you're talking to players saying, hey, I don't like that, I don't like this, 5 meters here and that sort of thing. And then that just helps, I think, keep you more engaged with the action, and you're understanding, okay, she's got that, now I have to focus on what's going on in the circle, and those sort of things. So
I think it's important to understand that we always have to keep scanning the field. There's some naughty people out there sometimes that try their luck, and we have to pick on those moments also and make the players understand that we are aware of what's happening. It's not always possible, but I think as the lesser busy umpire in that moment, your job is not to sit back and say, well, I'm just having a picnic on this side of the field and let me know when you need me. Your job is to actually make sure that your co-umpire knows that you are there, because it's pressure for that person, but that you are there for the support, watching off the ball stuff and still taking your area of the field that runs from baseline to baseline. So the proximity or the distance between the two umpires still needs to be close. So if there's a major decision and we have to sort of have a chat with each other to try and get the correct decision, you need to sell that decision, and you're not going to do that parking in the 23 on the other side of the field.
Yeah, absolutely. I've found, I know you've probably done a lot of really lopsided games in your international career as well, but definitely in PAF there's been some, and I remember that I felt like when I was the supporting umpire for that less busy time that I was actually running more, and I felt like I was needing to work harder, because I was consciously having to think through, okay, how do I keep going? What do I need to focus on? What is happening next? And it's maybe a little less habitual than when you're the controlling umpire. Just it's very naturally. It's like, well, I got to make these calls. So it's all at you. So it's actually even more, I think, exhausting to not be involved all the time and trying to adjust and making sure you're proximate, but also watching your mission critical area at the other end of the field. So there's a lot of hard work that's done, even when you're not the one blowing the whistle. So
it doesn't stop. And I think, at the level that we are at, the demand to be physically fit is really important. And that's each one to their own. At the level and the pace that the game is happening these days, it takes you one game. If you're not fit, you'll get caught out. But I think the mental fatigue is what kills you. I think after a game, it's just, you can't go back and just think of everything that happened. It's that side is what actually tires you out more than being physically tired from a game. And I think where, there's rotation with players, the substitution, things like that. So the zone in, zone out is there all the time. And the same with the running for us on the field also. You have moments where you run more and moments where you are more stationary, but the mind is active all the time. So, come last day of a tournament, you're mentally just completely over it. And that's something that you constantly have to keep working on, is to, stay mentally sharp and be ready for whatever happens. You've got to be thinking quite quick on your feet.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. But that brings us really nicely to the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because I have always been in awe of your fitness, and you obviously place a big premium on it. I remember in Boston, it was your rest day, and you were busy. You did a lot of batches in that tournament, and then on the rest day, you were heading to the gym, and it was like. Oh boy.
Nothing much has changed there, Keely.
I know
hasn't changed
you're a
much.
total gym pig. So is that have you always just been really excited about fitness and that's always been a big priority in your life and it just ties over into umpiring, or did you realize what a great impact being really fit has on your performance as an umpire, and so that really got you to the next level of fitness? Which way did that really go for you?
Yeah.
I think you've always been
Keely,
obsessed.
for me,
But...
sport. Yeah, I think it just got progressively worse over time, and I am getting older now, so my body does take strain because I don't really give it time to recover after training sessions. But I think sport has always been part of my life. I do it because I have a passion for it, and somehow, from playing and coaching through John and Peter Wright, I got involved with the umpiring side of things. Remembered my first year just absolutely hating it, saying this is not for me. I'm a team person. I want to be around my mates, and then you get onto the field and people just throw chirps at you. But I think I've grown a lot as a person. I've learned a lot of life lessons through the umpiring career. And I think if I didn't have that support, probably, and it was the easy part, I think, for the Wright brothers were to maybe get me involved with it. But then when I started doing the umpiring or getting more involved with the umpiring, it was, hey, but hold on, you also have to be fit. And then it's, seeing how fitness affects your ability to move, your mental sharpness, things like that. So I'm just fortunate that I don't train or exercise for the umpiring. My umpiring benefits from my lifestyle. So I'm lucky in that sense that for me, it's not punishment to go out and train. I would spend my life in a gym if I could. But it's nice to see also with the new umpires coming through the ranks. It's a given. That's what we do. We can't wait to get to the hotel. We can't wait to, see each other in the gym. And that's a trend. We all doing that. And I think it speaks for the level of umpiring or umpires that are coming through the ranks. You can see that they are physically, in shape. And it shows just the commitment that they have towards, this part of their career. And we know players, teams work so hard to get to tournaments. Everyone they have their goals set out for where they want to play on the last day. So you're actually just shooting yourself in the foot if you're not going to be physically fit, because that's the first part. If you can get to that and you have that self-discipline, so you don't train just for a tournament, but it's part of your lifestyle, it's day to day, it actually becomes easier to do it. But I don't think it will go away. It's just, for some people it's more difficult, but I just think I'm lucky that it's part of what I enjoy doing.
Yeah, it's interesting because in a few of the previous broadcasts, I've been a little hard on runners, and Gary here is just sort of saying, "Are you going to get some love for the runners this week?" And I guess what I'm trying to say is that I've always thought that we're getting better and better at understanding what training specifically helps umpires and the type of fitness that umpires need on the pitch. And that usually doesn't involve, running a 5K or running a marathon or anything like that. It's much more that dynamic work, the intervals, sprints, and that sort of thing. And that's the stuff that I'd be more willing to do if my knees would allow me anymore. But that was more interesting than maybe going on the long runs. But I think we can all find different ways to get the kind of physical work we need that we enjoy. So for me, it was CrossFit.
Yes.
I loved CrossFit, and just pushing around all the big weights and the high intensity and the competitiveness. And that was when I was at my fittest. So I think for anybody out there who wants to raise their level of fitness as an umpire, just find what you love to do. And I mean, you love obviously to do everything in the gym, so you have no problem. You're like, I'll do it all. But for you at home,
I have a secret. I don't like running at all. That's not something that if I had to go and do a cardio workout, it would be cycling. I have an indoor bike, so we'll spend an hour on an indoor bike. Doing weights and things like that. But I've also realized that as I get closer to tournaments and my age obviously keeps going up, running is a part of it that you have to do, and your rotation, because you keep turning and a lot of the stuff is backwards running. And I can promise you, out of all of the trainings and things that I've done, nothing hurts my body more than a full tournament of just umpiring. So yeah, it's hectic, but you get to a point where you understand what your body needs in order to perform at that level.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm at about 3 minutes left in the second quarter here. GB's kind of crawling back into the game. Carol's taking a little bit of the action for you, but in about a minute and a half, we're going to have a double card situation, which is pretty rare, especially in the women's game. So we're gonna go through that when it sort of comes up, but maybe we'll play it through, and then everybody will start the third quarter together and that sort of thing. But I have a quick question that we can probably get through before we get to that moment. And I don't know if if Eugene Joubert is of any relation. I'm not going to assume. Joubert is a very popular last name. He could be a total stranger.
It is a popular last name.
There you go. Exactly.
I would like to think of him as a stranger, but no, he's my brother.
So your brother, for some reason, doesn't know what your first game was as an international umpire. Do you remember? Do you remember your first game?
Jeez. It must have been a local test series, I think, because, the South African, the way we get exposed is some countries travel here because they love, obviously, coming to South Africa. It's cheap for everyone to travel to. I definitely don't remember what game it was. I can't even remember who the umpires were, but I was told to just, for the first couple of games, test matches, to sit on the bench as a reserve umpire, watch and observe. And I was like a kid in a toy store, just thinking, geez, this is amazing. You're around these national players and these big names or whatever. But it would have probably been a local game. I could think it could have maybe involved Scotland and South Africa or something like that. But yeah, those are the games that you just, and I see so many of our young and up and coming umpires when they see countries are traveling to South Africa for test series, usually January, February, and they get opportunities to umpire these games. The excitement is insane. And I remember that part when I was there. And it's just, it's a nice feeling to actually share that with someone, that excitement, and that they, it's teams that you see on TV and now you're actually on the field with them. So yeah, it's a good feeling, but it's a very long time ago for me. So now I don't remember the teams, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I'll be hunting my brother down after this.
Yeah. Like, nice guy. Hey, I was going through it in my head too and thinking, okay, when you said it was a test and, much like you, Canada needs to go and to play tests elsewhere in order to get more matches, because we don't have a lot of matches that the Canadian women particularly are involved with, just because of the tier of competition that they're in and their placing. So mine was Canada versus Scotland in Largs. I don't know why.
Wow.
I guess it made a big impression on me, but yeah, that was way back. That was a long time ago. I'm not even going to say, because then everybody will be able to figure out how old I am. So we're not talking about that.
Nothing wrong with your memory. I really, that's commendable, Keely. Well done.
Who knew? That was when I met Martin Madden's father for the first time. Craig Madden was UM for me there. So I didn't even know Martin Madden existed at that point, and he was probably just a teenager at that point. So there you go.
Jeez.
So I know, right? Small world. So here we are at the end of Q3. We're going to go back to the cards that happened just about a minute and 30 prior to that, because it was kind of interesting. So I'm going to bring it up on the screen. Hopefully you can see it.
Michelle Joubert, unsighted.
And there was a little foot that Cara helped you with at the top of your circle there. And then you can see inside the circle, there's a lot of action happening. And again, Chalker's in the middle of it. So
it down.
As I come in, I actually try to zoom in so that I can see. And you're coming in for an intervention here, and you're coming in to talk to the players and saying something, and you'll let us know what's going on here.
Shifts it to her left-hand side. In from Claxton, another touch this time.
And then I think the ball goes out of play.
Pad up.
And we have another reset. We have another 23-meter restart. And then you've had enough. Something happens. Do you remember what you saw from your angle there?
So, Yeah, I can see it. Inside the circle, this is where you've got to have that zone in, zone out type thing. It's off-the-ball stuff that, players are pushing, that close man-to-man marking thing that happens. So I just stepped in and spoken to the two players that were obviously giving each other a little bit more than the general nudge or whatever. And after just dealing with it, after the reset of the freed, the same thing happened again. And it's sometimes, more often than not, it's not the obvious ones. There's those subtle nudges that you see. And if we don't pick on those, we can let the game, just progress in a downward spiral from there. So it's in the second quarter, you have this opportunity. What we try and prevent is waiting till the fourth quarter and where things really get heated, and then you start dishing out cards. And then afterwards, you say to yourself, where else in the game could I have picked a moment to get a message across? And I think that was probably why this green card happened. I'd just spoken to players. So we talk about our bag of tools as umpires. You've got your body language. You can make eye contact. You can speak to players. And when that doesn't work, we've got to step up and get to the card. So I think there was a subtle sort of push again from the player. And, after I'd just spoken, it's like being reprimanded by your mom saying, if you stop doing it, otherwise you're going to get a hiding. And then eventually you get a hiding. That's sort of, the way I look at it. And I think also for us the way I would think of cards is no surprises. Sometimes things are so obvious that everyone knows there's a card coming. And other times, I feel that if you can communicate through to players, whatever, by the time you get to the card, the players need to know, look, there was nothing else. It's not a surprise to them that there's a card coming. So she maybe felt that it was a bit harsh because she was just doing whatever. But sometimes those subtle things are the ones that create frustration between the players. Yeah. And at this level, they're quite sneaky.
Yeah, of course they are. So you sent one player, you sent a GB player off with a green, and then you sent the Oz player off with a yellow. Is it because there was something extra that happened, or how did that sort of work for you? Was one more the instigator?
I think there was, obviously it was maybe the verbal side of it, because and that's what we don't pick up on TV. So you deal with it, and then after that you get a player just, verbally, and we've got to step in on that also. They need to understand if it's something, just in general, it was horrible or whatever, can't believe it, you tend to let those things go. But as soon as the comments become directed at you, that's important to deal with it. And you've just given a green card. And maybe if I look back at it, I would probably have just spoken to the player again. But again, you never know what tools. Sometimes you can try everything and just it doesn't work in the game. Yeah. The players don't receive it well, the teams, and then it goes for a ball of nonsense. And that's when you start thinking this game must just end. But yeah.
No, I get it. Okay, that really helps. And that's something that, it's for those of you at home who are dealing with those sort of tussle confrontations, don't be afraid. You don't have to match the card necessarily. If one of the players has done something extra, or they're the instigator, something like that, you might mete out two different cards to each of those people. So just keeping that in mind. So I already put on the broadcast, we're heading into Q3 now. Things are moving a little along at a pace, and there's nothing really happening in this Q3 at the moment. It's kind of weird. So it's a good time to ask you some more questions from the people at home. And Simon Milford, really tough one here. How do we encourage more women to get into umpiring? What are your thoughts on this one? Because I know this is something that's important to you as well.
Yeah, it's such a difficult thing. I obviously, through my career, I look at where I started, how I started, and it was all just through support. I think, I had the right people and I was fortunate enough to be in the right place where we had both John and Peter Wright in the same provinces where I'm at, and they were my support group. And they gave me opportunities. They said, there's a game here, we are there to watch. So I always had constant feedback, and I had people encouraging me to say, there's something about you, you just have to keep going. The rest is all, you'll gain experience, and as you gain experience, you will get better. So, and I think that's, in general, there's a a shortage of umpires throughout the world, not just just on male umpires, but female umpires also. And I think it's our job, being at the level that we are at, to give back. And that's what I try and do locally. Is whenever I am around at schools and working, whatever, and they would contact me to say, "Do you mind coming to watch an umpire, whatever?" That's what a young and up and coming umpire needs. If you are fortunate enough to have umpires in your area, reach out to them, and hopefully, I think we all seem to be quite giving and willing to share our time. And for me, I've received so much in my almost 20 years of umpiring. The least I can do is give back. So it's trying to encourage any youngster to carry on umpiring. The work starts with us as the seniors. We've got to make sure that we are reachable and that we put ourselves out there to support these young umpires, because I think at the lower levels, you have lesser skill, coaches that are more arrogant. There's no protocol there. You've got parents thinking that they understand the game. And that's where a person that picks up a whistle, they might put it down immediately after that game to say never again. So I don't just look after the umpires or trying to support them. It's also, if I'm in an environment where there's abuse towards an official on the field, doesn't matter if it's a school or a club game, I'll be the person that will have an opinion to that, or try and ask that person to leave the game or whatever. And those are the things we've got to try and protect the umpires as they come through the ranks, because at that level, the same as what the players are, they're learning. They're still learning skills. They're learning about the game, and it's no different for the umpires. And that's what the coaches need to understand also and take on board, that you're not going to get an international umpire always umpiring an under 14 or under 12 game. But yet again, the coaches, they treat those umpires as if they should be that. So it's always perspective changing. So for me, the important thing is to try and identify talent and then get them into a system where, even if it's in a different province, to make contact with my contacts in the different provinces to say, look, there's a youngster here, let's try and see and get them to tournaments or something like that. It is difficult. I think we lack manpower overall across the world, I think, with hockey, to get people out there to do umpire developing. And that's also why I think what you're doing here is it's a teaching tool. And hopefully people are listening and are inspired to actually carry on and pursue a career in umpiring.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. We talk a lot about women's participation and breaking through and becoming equal in many spheres in the world, and a lot of it has to do with being seen and being visible. And so it's very important to me that I'm showing off our best women's umpires on a regular basis and that sort of thing, and our visibility as senior umpires in our communities, going out there and making sure we're supporting and things like that. But something you said about when you're not even in an official role, but you just happen to be watching a game on the sideline, and if you see something you don't like, you speak up and you make sure you address it. And I think when people ask, how do we get more umpires? How do we get more female umpires in particular? We have to think that every one of us in the hockey family have to take an active role in doing this. And so when you are a player, if you want to see more female umpires out there, if you want to see more umpires and better umpires, because you'll get better umpiring if you have more people, then you as a player have to think, I need to take conscious steps to make sure that abuse isn't happening, harassment, that we're supporting, female umpires as a player, as a coach, as an administrator, all those other people. This isn't a job for the umpiring community. This is a job for the whole hockey family to take on and say, this is something that we want to change in our culture. So, it's easy for me to say in Canada, where we actually have far more female umpires than we do male, just because of, our sport. But there are obstacles. There's gender specific socialized obstacles that we have to understand and appreciate, and we all have to work to dismantle them. Time commitment issues and all that kind of stuff, right?
And it's difficult, Keely, because I understand, as coaches or teams within leagues, it's important for them to win or whatever. The result of the game is always important. But to understand that I don't think there's any person that would take a whistle and say, I feel like going out and just making bad calls today. We all get out there, we try our best, and it's only through experience that we get better. I think we sometimes, I always say, if you become arrogant on the field as an official, you deserve all the abuse you get. It's, our job is there to serve the game, to try and be as open as possible. But in the same sense, if I've had a bad game, I'm open to discussion afterwards. It's all about how I'm being approached. So if you can approach me in a calm manner, then yes, let's talk. But if it's not going to happen like that, and I think sometimes the most difficult games to umpire are the lower level games. Like if I stand on the field and I obviously sometimes umpire under 7 or under 8 hockey, and if you have to blow every foot that you see, the game would be standing still. So, but that's where I've had the worst abuse ever, is from parents umpiring mini hockey where it's 6-a-side. And I'm like, dude, like, it's not about that. These kids need to learn. It's, there's the fun factor in this, but not everyone understands it. And, hopefully we can try and get the coaches to get on board with something like this also. And the important thing is to try and give back as much as possible. And it starts with us. We've got to try and educate people and educate players on what is right and what is wrong in terms of etiquette on the field. So when I coach a team, one of the things is if you chirp an umpire, you off the field. Yep. It is just it's what you can control. We don't control umpires' decisions. So why would you want to lose your temper and waste 2 minutes of your game time complaining about an umpire's decision? It's not going to change. So just move on from it. And I think at senior level, a lot of the teams that's what they focus on. We have a game plan. This is what we set up against this team, and that's what they focus on. So sometimes when we do get questioned or the emotions get high, we need to understand it's important for both teams they all want results at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Liz Pelling has a really nice comment here. She's talking about the need for talent scouts, that we need clubs to come to us and tell us when they have umpires with potential or even personalities with potential. And that's how we get people who are taking responsibility again. And it's the outside. It's not just the umpires going out there and finding other umpires. It's clubs saying, hey, we've got this great person. They've got a fantastic personality. They understand the rules. They're clever. And, they would be lovely out on the pitch. Can you take them under your wings, sort of thing? So, yeah, and I have seen that sort of thing happen. And it's really great. More of that. We just need it all. So There we go. Q3 is winding down really nicely. I'm just saying, Gary mentioning that the parents aren't as bad in hockey as they are in, say, other sports. And I think in general, we talk a lot about dissent in our game as opposed to, others. And I think we're actually, I think we have it good, but we have to work really hard to make sure it doesn't get worse. And we can still raise the standards,
I think for me, the important thing is at those lower levels is to try and to also get the umpires to not focus on the stuff that happens on the side of the field, because once you get involved with that, that's where it breaks you. And I think one of the first things as an official in any sport is you have to have a thick skin and broad shoulders and not take things personally. Once you start taking those things personally, that's when it affects your interest in pursuing a career in umpiring. But it's not easy at the beginning level of your career. You don't want that. You are not confident. You're still wondering if you should do this, and you don't always have someone that's going to fight your battles for you on the side of the field or support you. So it is. I think in any sport, there's you get really good parents, you get good coaches that you can work with. For me, it's just obviously because it's me. If I had to get onto the field and umpire a school game, I could have the worst game of my life, and there won't be chirps, and that makes me sad, because just because I have had a career, people think that everything is perfect, but it's not. I still make mistakes even at that level. You still, have bad calls and things like that, but it's because it's Michelle Joubert. It couldn't have been a bad mistake. But take any, up and coming umpire making that same bad call or wrong call, and they'll get scrutinized. And I think that's where it's who you are type thing. I don't really like it a lot. So that's why I'm quite passionate about just getting everyone to understand and put it into perspective.
Yeah, that's the flip side to the respect and the credibility that you've built up over time with players is that, yeah, they have a lot of respect for you and what you do, and they'll let your little mistakes go. But it also, yeah, it does make you feel for the umpires who haven't had that opportunity yet to build up that base of reputation with the players, and they're the ones who get all the flack and that sort of thing. So yeah, that can be really tough. And I guess, is there anything that you do when you're working with umpires to encourage them? And is any specific techniques that you talk about with them when they're on the receiving end of that sort of thing? How do you support umpires in that regard?
So the one thing I would go to is just don't get involved. High emotions equals low intelligence. So you've got to try and just get yourself away from the situation. If it is a very young umpire, umpiring an important game, my suggestion, it's up to the school teachers or the club staff or whatever else to not put umpires at that risk. Sort of, right. If you know it's a clash game, you're not going to put two inexperienced umpires on a game like that, because you're exposing them, you're lining them up for failure, basically. So the important thing is to match them up with people that will be there to support them. And then afterwards, it's just to chat them through it and to say, look, mistakes are part of the game. You're going to make them as long as you are open to learning from it. Don't beat yourself up. It doesn't define who you are as a person. Don't go and lose sleep over it. But think about it, reflect on it, and try and find and just try and see why you made that mistake. And that is a learning curve. Maybe it was a positional thing. It was, it could be you were sidetracked by a chirp from the side of the field or whatever. That's what it's all about, I think.
Yeah. I actually get more nervous when I'm coaching umpires who are just flying by the seat of their pants, but doing amazingly. And they're just like, everything's working and their calls are great. And I'm like, ugh, because you get lulled into this feeling of, or perhaps into a lack of growth. And if you're not being challenged, respectfully, but if you're not being challenged, then maybe you're not growing as much. So when I have more novice umpires coming off the pitch and they've had a tough one, I'm like, you nailed it. And they're like, no, I was terrible. And I said, yeah, you were, but you got so many mistakes out of the way. Like, this is awesome. And you did it in a game where it's fine and nobody died, everybody's good. And look at all these mistakes you get to learn from now. And you don't ever have to make those mistakes again. Fingers crossed. It's like, look, you did it. You made those mistakes, but you managed to whistle the entire game. You got off, and all the players are in good health. Everything's fine. Now we have something to work with. We have an opportunity here, and trying to again, you don't ignore it. You don't try to pretend it didn't happen, but you reframe it into something that actually is useful and productive. So I absolutely love that. It's interesting. Simon's just pointing out, he's got a big long essay here, just talking about how young umpires both getting appointed to a final, and then the coaches are upset because in a school final where the future of the world is at stake. How dare we give young umpires experience in that respect? But how do you got to get into a big game at some point, right? I mean, when was the first big game on the international stage you had? And how did that go? Were you perfect? Did you nail it? Or was there a little bit of growth?
No, I think it was probably in 2010 at the World Cup in Rosario in Argentina. I was still, I would say, very much inexperienced with the whole international scene. It was my first World Cup. And then I was still just absorbing the passion. And remember, I come from South Africa, where if we get 4 people in the stands at a game, it's a lot. So for me, this whole tournament was just my jaw was hanging the whole time, just trying to take everything in. I had so much fun. We were such a nice group of umpires, everyone getting along, and then getting appointed to a semi-final. And it was nerve-wracking, but at the same time, it puts things into perspective for you. And then I go to Rio, where obviously I had an injury early on in the tournament. And with the one game, I think it was the quarterfinal, it was Argentina-Holland. Even by my own standards, I was off bar, and I was umpiring with Laureen Delforge. And all I could think of was the pain that I was in my feet. And it's just getting off the field, going onto social media. That's one thing that I've learned. Stay away from social media while you're at tournaments. People are ruthless with comments. And that is the part that I hope that I never become, even after I've retired, is to feel free to take onto social media, because you don't know what those people are going through in that time. And that, it took me close apart to about a year to just sort of recover from it and say to myself, I still want to carry on umpiring. And it had a huge effect on me, where people would just say, umpire Michelle Joubert should have stayed in South Africa with the rest of the South Africans. Hope Argentina wasn't too sad that they lost, because umpire Michelle Joubert tried to keep them in the game or in the tournament for as long as possible. And I take things like that personally, because I don't think I'm that type of person. But then again, you support crowd, or you'll support your family, your friends, and they help you put things back into perspective again, in terms of it's not who you are. And I think that's the part in my umpire coaching or support that I would give any up-and-coming umpire, is have your support group, have the people that will help you identify those mistakes, but also help you get over it as quick as possible, because it can have a long-lasting effect. I mean, that almost ruined my career for me. I really had to dig deep and find a part in me to actually say, okay, I still want to carry on for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing that, because those are tough moments, and and I'm sorry you went through that. I'm glad that you've been able to collect that support network, and you've got that to lean on. So that's the thing that we really need to take home, is it's just like with any kind of mental health, have your people, don't be afraid to reach out, don't be afraid to talk about what's bothering you.
And I think it's also it's important for the people out there, the public, to understand that those words have long-lasting effects on people. I'm fine with it now, and I'm older, I'm an adult, but those words to a young person, so you feel you've achieved something, going to a school's tournament, and you get the final, and it's a big moment for you, and then to hear a coach saying these kids shouldn't be on this game, it breaks you. So that's why we are lacking in numbers, because people don't see the level of hockey for what it is. It's about, at school level, at young youth level, it's not about winning. It is about developing skills, working together as a team, building relationships, things like that. They're still learning the game, and we're not helping at all by allowing players to abuse umpires, coaches that feel free to just do it. It has a long-lasting effect. So what will happen at the end of the day, we won't have umpires left, because people will just say it's just hurtful. And I'm really lucky that in the beginning of my career, I had that support, and I've had people that will help me bounce back. So when Rio happened, it was far along in my career already. So I have the tools to try and bounce back from it. But a lot of young people don't. So it's difficult.
Yeah, I get that. On the last episode, I don't know if you got all the way through. I brought it up with Simon Mason quite late in the show, because I was hoping that people would have dropped off by that point. Unfortunately, there was still like 80 people on the broadcast. But somebody poked me enough that I talked about the Canada-Ireland video referral decision and everything that happened around Diego. And I still get very upset talking about it, because, and it wasn't even me, obviously, but Diego's a friend, and I care very deeply about him, and I care very much about how that experience would have affected all of you, and the threats, the abuse, dangerous and very damaging. And I really did worry about how that would chill all of you and make you think twice about your participation on social media and things like that. And that doesn't, that punishes you for wanting to reach out and be human and be, hey, get to know me, but you're opening yourself up, with that vulnerability.
Yeah.
So I guess we still have to, take those things into account, be balanced. And then that's why there's people like me around who are ready to spring into action and try to defend you as best I can from another point of view and just help deflect some of that, I guess. So
yeah, that situation was just really hard sore. I remember after the game, I reached out to Diego just on Messenger, and I gave him it because I'd obviously gone through the social media abuse after in Rio, and it's the worst thing. You can't think what goes through that person's head, reading all of those things. And people are ruthless in their words, and they don't think about the effects, that it has on a person. And so I just remember sending him a message saying, dude, I know what you're going through. Get off social media, give yourself time. If you need someone to chat to, I'm here. And that is what I want to give back out there, is to be that support for my fellow umpires, for up and coming umpires, whatever. And hopefully, just if I can get two people to just rethink the whole abuse, and social media is horrible, and I'm not saying it shouldn't, healthy discussion, healthy debate, but you don't know what goes on in that person's head. And I don't think the public understands the difficult conditions under which we have to try and sometimes do video referrals with angles, with things like that. And it's a pressure situation. Everyone is watching. The clock is ticking. They expect you to give an answer, and sometimes you give it a decision, and afterwards you're like, "What was I thinking?" But it is high pressure stuff, so it's not on purpose. So when people start commenting, saying you cheated a team out of something, no, you didn't. You made a mistake. If it is what it is, it was a mistake. You've learned from it. So by all means, feel free to discuss with the person, make contact and say, what were you thinking? Why did you do it this way? But to say that you've cheated the person, or, to threaten them and things like that, it has severe, long-lasting sort of effects on a person and on the mental well-being. So, and I think that could be it's things like these that could be the cause of any person, stopping umpiring. And I was so happy to see Diego back on Pro League games, back in the video box, and not just saying, I'm done with it. Sorry, Keely, it's getting dark because we still have load shedding, so my face might disappear at some stage. So.
Well, you're okay. We're still seeing you a little bit,
okay.
But you should have had your candles all set up, I guess, not knowing that it was happening. But there you go. Well, we've got maybe another 20-ish minutes. Maybe give or take. Fine. We'll see how it goes. But if we lose you, then we'll just shed a tear and then have to move on. So again, all of you at home, I mean, there have been tons of comments coming through. Everybody saying, thank you, Michelle, for sharing your experiences and your thoughts on that. It's really important for us to get that out there. So yeah, thank you for all that. Too many anonymous keyboard warriors on social media. You're absolutely right, Gary. There's a lot of that going on. So I'm glad we had that discussion. That was really important. If you guys have any other questions that you want me to get to Michelle, you've only got a few more minutes left, so get them on the chat right now. I think we're just going to roll out sort of the rest of the game. There was one play that I might just pull in because it was something that we talk about on a regular basis with ball placement and rolling balls and that sort of thing. Yeah, I'll go to that right now because I'll wait for everybody's questions to come rolling in. So if you're watching here, this happened a little bit earlier in the quarter than where we are. We're at 12 minutes, and this is Hannah Martin here on the ball, and she's getting a little bit of pressure, and then you call the free hit, the ball rolls towards the sideline, and then Martin picks it up, and then she's just sort of on the roll, on the dribble, and sends it into the circle, and you called that back. Was there anything in particular, were you calling that as the rolling ball or the ball placement or straight into the circle? What do you remember what was going through your head there?
I think she's Keely. I'm trying to think what went on there. First of all, in my opinion, if I had to go back to that, I would probably have dealt with it differently because, the rule states there's got to be 2 clear movements when a free hit is taken, and this player was just, there were no 2 movements. It's not about the ball being stopped dead. It's, when you take a free hit, it's got to be obviously the 2 movements on the ball.
So I would have probably had to just step in, probably reset the game or reset the feed, and then just speak to the players. So again, that whole thing of no surprises. If I have to reverse a decision or card the player for obviously not doing things within the right spirit of the game, it's things like these that you look at. But again, if I look at my positioning, that's the first thing we always look at. If there's a controversial decision, is what did I see in that moment? So I was fairly far away, and just, I've got to try and be closer to the game there. So I think, in that instance, probably a good thing would have been to just try and reset it. No one was unfairly advantaged or disadvantaged by it, but it looked bad in the end, and then obviously they lost possession. So
Yeah, you're hard on yourself, because I loved that call. I thought it was great, because it wasn't just that the player took it on the dribble and then continued and didn't do anything productive. But the fact that she sent it into the circle, had you not, I think if you had reset that might have been an even more kind of awkward moment, because the ball's already been sent to the circle. Everybody's, getting ready for something important to happen there, but it was just more definitive. Fourth quarter, I think you've probably set your standards as to how you want the ball to be played off free hits. So I would have been surprised actually if you had reset it there. So it's interesting how you're second guessing yourself when you go back to it.
I don't think I would have reset it that far along in the actual taking of the free hit. I would have had to deal with it in the moment, and deal just in the moment. But I think, why I gave the free hit out, I probably don't know. But I think I wasn't happy with the overall setup. Just looking at it now again, it's the first time I look back at this game. So it's interesting, and it's a learning thing also. Like, we keep learning all the time.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's interesting because there was a couple other moments later in that quarter where, so you'd called that free hit against Martin, and then there were a couple moments where you needed to call a penalty corner and didn't play through an advantage, and you needed to go over to Martin, who was the player who was on the ball, and just, hey, okay, I'm sorry, but this is what I had to do. Everybody else had stopped, and that sort of thing. And you had those moments of rapport building coming back to that player, which I really like to see, because they can kind of feel like when that gets called, "Ooh, did your lights come back on?"
No, I'm being handed a torch here, so I've got some light happening here next to me, so I'm getting back on. Africa's a tough country, they say. So we haven't had load shedding in months, and I promise you, we chatted for 15 minutes before the session, everything fine, and as we started, I was like, I can't believe this computer's just gone off. But I've got a light now, so you can see me again. So
Absolutely. I'm like, oh, it's like a second dawn. There you go. I got totally distracted. I don't know what I was saying. Anyway, but you do a nice job of reconnecting with the players that maybe you've made a harsh call on, or maybe an unexpected one, and I really like to see that in that game, so that's good. So we have a couple questions coming through now, so maybe this will be a nice way to sort of finish off. Neil is asking if you have a particular position you take when you are the disengaged umpire at a corner, or do you change it up depending on how the attacking team is setting up?
Hi, Neil. Thank you for your question. Nice to see your profile pictures of you umpiring. So you are one of us.
Yes, he is.
I think your umpire positioning for me as the disengaged umpire is always my first thing is always I've got to be there for my co-umpire. So whatever happens, I'll always adjust my position so that I'm in line where if my co-umpire had to look up, that they can see me clearly. So that's why I am always called the runner on the field, because I do run quite a bit. And then the other thing is also to be able to stand at an angle where you can obviously your co-umpire is able to see you. You are close enough to assist your umpire in selling big decisions if there's a big decision that needs to be made on your side of the field. And then lastly is also to make sure you're not in line with play, because I think it's always be working at angles where you can see off the ball things a lot more. And then through practice, trial and error, it's also that whole thing of don't just zone in on the ball, because that's where you miss a lot of stuff that happens above the ball, the hand on the back and things like that. So I can't say 100% there's a specific position. The only thing is I know that when there's a counter attack, that I'm on my bicycle and I try and get back to my 23 as quick as possible, and then trying to get into the circle in the right position. We have power now, Keely. It's just come on.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
And that's fantastic timing. There you go. So just at the end of the fourth quarter, because you and I talked about this yesterday, so hopefully you remember enough about the situation, because I didn't clip it because the camera actually, the production didn't show what exactly happened. But near the end of this fourth quarter here, you had another unusual carding situation where an Australian player, I think it was Mariah Williams, got caught up with Tessa Howard's stick on GB, and they did the old pulley thing. And then Howard's stick went flying, hit Unsworth in the back, and you needed to do something. Now you and I were talking about this. Tell me what was going through your head at that moment, because it was you did the whole duck on the top of the water with the legs going very quickly underneath.
So I don't even think I think the ball had already gone somewhere else. So my eyes were in completely a different place, or maybe I was backtracking to get into position for whatever was coming next. And then it's just all of a sudden you see something catches your eye and it puts your focus there. And then I just saw a stick. By the time I got my eyes to where the action was, the stick was already flying. And I remember stopping time and then thinking to myself, I don't have a clue, but I don't know what happened. And on top of that, I'd also lost the player. But I was lucky in that moment, and it was even tried to go back after the game to try and see exactly what happened in that moment, because the last thing I want to do is card a player and then I'm horribly wrong. Because if in that stage I was wrong, I would have gone back to the player after the game to say, I got it wrong, but I didn't see and I needed to react to something, because it's not normal to have someone's stick just fly off the field. But I was fortunate enough that the Aussie player was standing with her finger like this going, it was her. So she actually pointed out the player to me, which was perfect for me, because she really, I feel like I owe her a drink or something after the game, because I had to stop time. I knew someone had to get a card, but I didn't know which player it was. And then, you start playing through your head. What are you going to do? Are you going to call the group together and say, well, one of you needs to go, so come clean or whatever else? But luckily, by the time I was busy processing all of this, I had a player saying it was her. So, the saying, snitches get stitches. If that was the case, there was someone definitely going to end up in hospital. But yeah, I got caught out there. It's not my first time, and I'm sure it won't be the last time. But yeah, it was a stressful situation for me, but quite funny now. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, that happens to a lot of us, right? And we just have to make the best of the situation. Maybe it's communication from our colleague. Maybe you just keep your ears open. Maybe there's a captain who's going to help you with some good information. Who knows? Feel for you. It's definitely happened to all of us. Terry Norwood has a question for you here. How many red cards have you given at international level? And do you remember how they came about and how you felt about them?
Terry, I can thank you for your question. I can, with all my pride, say I've never, ever given a red card.
Oh.
I've been fortunate enough to, I don't know, somehow never been in a situation or have had a game where I had to get to that point where it's a red card situation. I've seen video clips of red cards, and I always wondered to myself, you think to yourself, what would you do in that situation? It is a big decision to give, and it's not that I'm scared to do it, but it's a red card is really it's something that you would issue for a situation that is completely just out of the ordinary or whatever. It will be physical play, things like that, but I would always, I think it would be two players punching each other or something like that. Anything deliberate, I would say, and physically deliberate is something I would go to. But I would hope that I can retire with that on my sort of plate, saying that I'm proud that I have never given a red card. So let's not jinx this, okay?
Yeah, I know. I think you just totally ruined it for yourself. Your first international match, you walk out there and all of a sudden you're going to have to give a red. I actually, I've only given 3 red cards in my lifetime, and 1 in an international match. And it was just the most, it was almost like time stopped, and I was in Brazil doing the very vaunted hockey superpowers of Brazil versus Bermuda. And
Yeah.
there was just a free hit taken out of the back by a quite powerfully built defender from Bermuda. And a Brazilian attacker tried to come and pressure her and sort of ran up and just lost control of her body and just kind of bounced right off her and down onto the ground. This little Brazilian soccer player who probably picked up a stick 2 months prior is down on the ground, and she's not happy. The Bermudian kind of looks down at her and goes, huh, and then hits the ball way up the field. And from the ground, the Brazilian attacker is really upset at the treatment that she's received. So she turns around with her stick and just whacks the Bermudian player on the back of the legs. And it was sheer luck that I happened to still be watching these players. And I think it was more because I was really amused at the fact that this player had gone bouncing off, just lying on the ground. And I see the stick, and it was one of those moments. Somebody asked me, well, do you know where the ball was? And I said, I didn't care. I needed to stop time right away because that could have been a brawl. And just stop time, red card. Off she went. And I was like, oh, that was my first straight red card for violence given. And that's, a really unfortunate situation and just lack of discipline. And I think we don't see many red cards in hockey because the culture of our sport is that we understand that violence isn't acceptable, and we have this weapon in our hands, and we're not using it. And I think that's really, really important. So there you go. Getting lots of thanks for the session. Sarah Bennett here, thanks, brings back lots of memories. So Sarah Bennett, always good to see you on the broadcast. So nice. And and Liz just pointing out that that you manage the games before the red cards are necessary. So that is a big part of it for sure.
Oh, Lizzie, you're amazing. Thanks for that vote of confidence in me. Fake it till you make it is what they say.
Yeah, you bet. No, Liz is fantastic. I loved being able to work with her when I was in England.
Yeah,
so,
she's good.
Hi, Liz. It's good to see you again. I tell stories about something that she helped me with in my umpiring career at every single umpiring clinic I do. So, Liz, your legacy is moving on. Keep it up. Keep up all the good stuff. Let's see. Oh, this looks pretty complicated, but I'm going to put this up from Roshi to see if we can address it here. A famous clip in the commentary is Belgium, Australia. You were in the VR box. Oh, I remember. So this is something that we went through. Yeah, it was the men's game. And we actually went through this clip when Thomas Briel was on the broadcast because he wanted to, he was interested in what the perspective was. Why wasn't it a penalty corner? And so we went through that scenario. So Roshi's question, just talking about, so would that have been a moment for a red card for you? And I mean, I'm not surprised at all that you came back with a yellow, but what was your thinking coming back on that?
So Keely, one of those things is, one thing that I can admit was the restart of how I restarted the game afterwards was wrong. When you're sitting in that video box, you trying to get all the angles. It's never the same at every tournament. At whatever tournament you go to, you have a different broadcasting company you have to work with. They just say, well, you've got certain angles, you've got this, you've got that. So when all the focus is just on, because I obviously was watching it from the window, so I was watching the game live, and then obviously as I bring it up, I would then focus on the screen. And watching the game live, I had actually seen the incident, and then I knew it was going to be referred, but I didn't even look at what happened in the game. So I knew that the referral was going to come. So for me, it was just I needed to look at that situation. And then by the time I got to chatting to the broadcaster or the director and asking him for the angles or whatever else, everything was just gone. And so my restart of the game was completely wrong. And those are the things that we try and increase our percentages of getting these decisions right. In terms of the physicality in that situation. So from what I could see and on the slow-mo, the two sticks had connected. The one player he had sort of tangled his stick, and it was just, if the sticks didn't connect, I think it wasn't a malicious thing that he had run with his stick at the player to hit him. It was almost it was part of the motion of the stick that actually made contact with the player. So therefore, my recommendation was a yellow card offence. I think if we start giving red cards for things like that, we will be seeing a lot more red cards happening, at any level, because sometimes it happens where two sticks connect or whatever else, and what do the two players do? If you've played hockey yourself before, what do you do when two players run at the ball and the sticks connect? They're not going to stand and say, well, okay, you unhook yours and then I'll unhook mine and we'll carry on. Both players will be, busy, obviously trying to pull the stick. And I think it was, from my perspective, what I took from it, nothing was clear cut in terms of it being a red card situation. So my recommendation was a yellow card. And I think even after watching the replay, I would stick to that same decision. To me, it's just not a red card decision. And the interesting thing is, people think that there's a right and a wrong, but at top level, these type of decisions, there is no right and wrong. It's different people have different perspectives, and sometimes teams like it and sometimes teams don't. And hockey umpiring is about obviously the rules of the game, but applying the rules of the game operates or happens mostly in that gray area. And that's why I say you have to have a feel for the game. And sometimes we get them right, sometimes we get them wrong. But it's just nice to go back afterwards and to look at that clip again and to say, for me, still till today, I would stick to the yellow card. But also knowing that I'm open-minded enough, if one of my umpire managers come to me and say, look, you got it wrong, that should be a red card, I would always ask questions, because if I understand it, if it gets explained to me that I've made a mistake and this is what you need to look at, then I understand and I can actually move on from it and get it right the next time. But as for this one, I think, certain teams will feel differently about it. Certain coaches will feel differently about it. There's still not anyone that has come to say it's 100% right or it's 100% wrong. You've got to do with what your feeling is on the game.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think you got that spot on. And what I try to encourage people to think about when they're deciding, okay, when they're trying to make that decision, is it a yellow card or a red card? That is it a hockey play that maybe was done very recklessly? To me, that's a yellow card. If it's not hockey, it's a red. So the little Brazilian player, turning around and just thwacking the defender from behind her.
That is 100%. Yeah.
Intentional. That's not hockey. That's just violence.
Yeah.
So hockey can have a violent sense to it, but that's not the intention or the purpose of it. It's just part of the struggle, and maybe just somebody being foolhardy or reckless. But that, I think that's how you can draw the line. And it's interesting because I don't think that same distinction exists in soccer or football. I'm not an expert because I don't know a lot about the game. I'm Canadian, so clearly it's just not in my wheelhouse. But I get a lot of people saying who might be from the soccer football background. So like, oh yeah, that's a red card because it was very unsportsmanlike. And I had a discussion on Instagram over the last few days with somebody who's like, well, he just outright cheated, so it should be a red card. And it's like, well, that's not how we approach it, because we have a bigger toolbox. We have these temporary suspensions that I think are very valuable and really important. So but it's a culture. It's how we've decided as a sport we want to handle it, and it's about being consistent in that.
We are there to serve the sport. We're not there to be policemen and try and see if we can end the game with just 5 players on the field. And if players are going to be malicious and stupid enough to do certain things, then they need to take the knock and obviously deal with the discipline that's being handed out to them. But those cards are, if we can get through a game and the cards stay in the pocket, that's a good job. It means that the management tools that you worked with, the consistency between the two umpires, all of that stuff, it went well. We don't get out on the field trying to look for opportunities to just give cards. It's we're not policemen. We are officials. We are managers. We're managing the game. We're managing 22 players within boundaries that are set out by FIH rules body or committee. And sometimes we make mistakes, and we have to take the knock that comes with that. And you've got to grow from it. And the same as the players, if they need to know that certain actions will definitely have repercussion in terms of whether they stay on the field or not. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, that was a really nice positive note, I think, that we can end things off on. It's been 2 epic hours, and I'm amazed we got through the whole thing. Your phone didn't, crap out. We saw you most of the time. You're a little dark in a few spots, but all good. I'm just so happy that we're able to get through this. And Michelle, thank you so much for being so generous with your time and with your experiences and your wisdom. It's been absolutely incredible. So thank you so much for joining.
Keely, thank you very much. It's such an awesome program that you're running, and I think for people to actually get a chance to get to know people off the sports field is really important. It puts things into perspective, and I also think just in terms of people understanding, general public trying to understand how we apply ourselves to games, our challenges that we also face. Sometimes you have no idea what you're walking into until you actually get to a tournament in terms of the video umpire, the process. Sometimes there's language barriers, all sorts of things that we don't control. And I think for me as a person, the most stressful time for any game is the lead up to the game. The match itself is the easy part. It's all the protocols and things like that happen before the time that we don't necessarily control. Something stupid like when the director says you've got to start the game now, and the teams aren't there, and it's like, oh geez, and they're shouting at you because obviously the broadcasters need to get this game on and there's no team. So, and these things are the things that just comes back to the umpires. Why did the umpires start the game? They could see that the teams weren't out or whatever. So there's a bigger picture to everything. We all umpires are out there to try and do our best. And just be kind with your words. And my message out there to any person who wants to take a whistle. It's been an amazing career for me so far. And I think where you are at with this FH program of yours is something that I didn't have, or we didn't have in our beginning of our careers or whatever else. So it's really bringing the world closer, thanks to technology and the internet. And I just thank you to everyone that is listening and that's supporting this also. It really means a lot, and it shows that, umpires aren't always there to be hated, but there are actually people that do support us. And then for those people just at home trying to make it to the top, keep going, enjoy every game, and you don't think about the appointments. It's more about the people that you meet along the way. Those are the things that stay with you forever, not necessarily a gold medal match or whatever. It's about the friendships that you make, people that you can have healthy banter with away from tournaments. And I think that's where our friendship also started, was way back when, and look at where we are today. So thank you for everything, Keely. It was really amazing.
No, thank you, Michelle. And there's probably a whole bunch of other questions on the chat if you have a chance to pop in and just address them. Your brother had like about 4 or 5 other questions for you, so you might want to give him a call. I don't know. Yeah, you might want to reconnect with him because he seems to not know anything about you. I'm just saying, but yeah, there you go.
I will definitely give him a call afterwards. Thanks, Keely, and I will try and get onto the program a bit later and try and answer some questions that are there. Okay.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and take care, everybody. Stay at home, stay safe. Bye.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.